Hey, it's Terry Gorry, and this is the Irish Law and Small Business podcast. If you work in the service industry, and tipping is something that features large in your life in terms of your remuneration and so forth, you'll be glad to know that a new law on tipping came into effect on the Irish statute books from yesterday, the 1st of December 2022. The Act in question is the Payment of Wages Amendment Tips and Gratuities Act 2022, and it makes provision now for how tips, gratuities and service charges are to be shared between employees. It amends the Payment of Wages Act 1991, and it distinguishes between a mandatory charge imposed by the service provider, for example, a pub or restaurant, and a voluntary payment such as a tip or a gratuity given by the consumer or customer. Employers cannot now describe a mandatory service charge applied to a bill as a service charge unless the payment is treated in the same way as a tip or a gratuity. The effect of this provision is that the service charges can only be added to a bill if the money goes to the employees. So clearly that's good news for employees working in the service industry, in hotels, in restaurants, in pubs and so forth. All employees must be consulted on how the tips or gratuities are to be distributed between employees. Electronic tips by card or smartphone must be distributed in a transparent, fair way. Factors to be considered when deciding how to distribute tips include the worker's role in the delivery of the service, whether the employee is full-time or part-time contract, the number of hours worked, the value of the sales, seniority or experience of the employee. So they're factors that need to be considered when you're deciding how to distribute tips. The employers must give a statement to the employees showing how the tips have been distributed within 10 days of distribution. Cash tips are paid directly to the worker, and the employer must publish a notice of how cash tips are distributed. The tips and gratuities notice, and there is a notice that must go up or supposed to go up in the workplace. It's called a tips and gratuities notice, must state 1. Whether or not tips and gratuities are distributed amongst staff, 2. The way they are distributed and the amounts, and 3. Whether or not service charges are distributed and how, if they are, how they're distributed if they are. These rules are to be enforced through the Workplace Relations Commission, that's the WRC, who can order an employer to reimburse any unlawful tip or gratuity deductions. If the employee is not happy that the law is being applied in the workplace, he or she must first speak to the employer about it, and if this does not resolve the problem, then they can submit a claim to the Workplace Relations Commission in the usual way. This involves submitting an online complaint form on the Workplace Relations Commission website. The complaint must be submitted within 6 months of the alleged breach. Again, the Act is called the Payment of Wages Amendment Tips and Gratuities Act 2022, and if you're so minded you can get that online, because all Irish law which is on the statute books is published for free and is online on the Irish statute book website, and it's worth having a look at. But you can check out my website as well, employmentrightsireland.com. I've written a blog post basically called New Law on Tipping starts on 1st of December 2022. That's the situation. Hope you find this video useful. If you do, I'd appreciate if you gave it the thumbs up down below. Thanks a lot.